It's Halloween week on SDL, and I wore my Hack Naked shirt too for that, so just for that very reason. But today on SDL, we are going to talk with Eric Carlile from Zoom Communications about, well, you guessed it, video communications. You know, all those meetings and classes that you take all the time, because we're all doing Zoom meetings all the time, and we're going to talk about how those meetings work, how secure they are, and about one other thing, which you're going to like. We're going to talk about how to behave in those meetings, because sometimes people don't know that, and it can get you in a whole bunch of trouble. So I'm going to talk to Eric Carlile from Zoom Video Communications when we come back, so stick around.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So Tom can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. You're looking out through the HAL dot,
Oh.
Hey, Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like
I
Sims.
instead of AI, it's I.
Are you working on earning your Security Plus certification? Earn your certification faster and smarter with Cybex. Their courses and guides are compiled with CompTIA-approved content, providing you with the knowledge to be fully prepared on exam day. The Cybex Security Plus Gold course includes a partner-to-you pass guarantee. Users enjoy free course updates and repeats until you pass the Security Plus exam. Learn more and register for a free trial today at cybex.com/go/free trial. When you are ready to purchase, save 50% with code SECURITY50. Hurry, this offer ends December 31st. Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. QuickStart, creating world-class technologists. Join us for our webcast with Signal Sciences entitled, Which Way Should You Shift Testing in the SDLC? That webcast will be held November 8th from 3 to 4. You have to go to securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences to register now so that you can check that out. And if you are interested in quality over quantity and having meaningful conversations and relationships instead of just a badge scan, join us April 1st through the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019, where you can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Use the registration code OS19-SECWEEK for 15, that was SEC Week, SECWEEK, for 15% off the main conference or a World Pass. It's a lot of fun. We were there last year. Have a good time down in Disney. There's a lot of stuff to do there that doesn't involve mice as well, so it's a quite interesting time to be there. Today on SDL, Eric Carlile is an information security analyst with Zoom Video Communications. As you probably know, Zoom is a part of the really big video interaction marketplace which is going on. There's all kinds of different tools out there now, like Skype and WebEx and GoToMeeting and Connect and all kinds of things. A lot of people in that marketplace, and we all use these things all the time. I mean, I started using these a few years ago. I started seeing more and more stuff. Now we do classes with them, and we take training with them. Everybody's using all these kind of tools. And I started thinking that maybe there might be kind of time to discuss the security of these things, because a lot of people have been asking me about that, as well as the behavior of people using them, and maybe some other little items about that that I think are pretty important. So welcome, Eric. You're on.
Hey, thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me on the show here.
You're welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you moved from, say, more traditional IT roles into this sort of security role that you have now?
Yeah, not a problem. So I started pretty well still in high school. I worked for a small shop, removing viruses, stuff like that. Moved around in IT a lot, did some sysadmin work, network operations, taught programming for a nonprofit organization here in Kansas City. And then took a break from all that, did carpentry for a couple of years. When I was ready to get back into tech, I looked up Zoom, and tech support was the easiest entrance back in, because once you take a couple of years off tech, people don't like to let you back into those same roles you were in. So from there, the plan was just to get some certifications and move into security from there. But by the time I was ready to move out of tech support and into security, I didn't really want to leave Zoom. There was an opening in the security department here. So instead of starting off in a SOC somewhere, I was able to be an information security analyst for Zoom and didn't have to move very far.
Wow. And you did carpentry? Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I tried to do that once. I actually was going to make, I don't even remember what I was trying to make, but there was this thing called a planer. You know what a planer is? Or it was a router. I'm sorry. Like, you know what a router is, right? And I was trying to route this thing because we had built some guitars, and we had routed like the pieces on the guitars, and that worked okay. And I was trying to route, I was just going to route something else. I was trying to learn how to use it, and I put it in there, and I didn't read the instructions, of course. So I just fired it up, and it's like spinning really fast. And I put this thing in, and it shot this piece of wood through the back wall of my office. It like went all the way through the wall and shot into this guy's yard behind me. And he like came over and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I was trying to." That was the last time I tried carpentry. So after that, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna leave it to the experts. So I'll let you do the carpentry stuff." So.
Yeah, that stuff can get dangerous real quick if you're not taking proper precautions.
And I learned that. I was like, that's why I like tech, because you can only hurt yourself a little bit in tech. Like you get cut and shocked sometimes when you reach in the case, but it's just minor stuff. Like you don't lose limbs or have stuff get shot through your torso or something like that. At least I had a printer once that did that though. There were these things in printers, the top lifts up on them, and I was trying to work on this printer, and there were these things called torsion springs, which are these horrible little things that have amazing amounts of tension on them. And of course, I didn't read the instructions as usual, and I was just trying to get them out, and I sort of popped one out, and both of them flew out. One of them shot through the plastic case of the printer and just like shattered it, and the other one shot right by my head. I heard it go by, and it stuck in the ceiling like 12 feet above me. And I was like, I guess I should have read those instructions. So, yeah, but that's, RTFM.
No, I never liked printers anyway.
Yeah, me neither. Everybody hates them now. Okay, so enough about me. But, so the question I get, so this was my main question when I saw I was going to get to talk to somebody. And I don't really necessarily want to talk to you about Zoom per se, because I know you maybe don't want to talk, about specifics of Zoom. But I get this question a lot from people who are starting to move into this space. And the question is, we want to use online meetings at our company. We want to fill in the name of whatever product here. How secure is this? Am I going to have people spying on us? Are they going to be snooping on our meetings or what? And that was probably the number one question I got about online meeting space.
So that can be a bit of a hard metric to judge because you're really trying to compare the physical space that you typically do this in to a new a virtual space. I think a good way to approach this is to think about the protections that you typically have in your conference room and then compare those to what you're going to get in a video conferencing platform. When you're in your physical conference room, you've got the walls around you to keep people from hearing you. You've got a door, a lock, it's going to keep people out. That room's going to be situated in a building. There's probably going to be some access control, even to get onto your floor, into the building, maybe even into the parking lot. So right there, you've taken a huge human element out of that, and it's hard for anybody to get to you that shouldn't be there in the first place. And then if you're going to record that meeting, it's probably going to be with some kind of personal device that you're in control of. But when you take a meeting online, you lose those protections that we tend to take for granted, and we have to try and emulate those in a virtual sense. So, but the problem is people aren't used to dealing with those kind of controls online. So when they encounter those virtual equivalents, it can be seen as inconvenient or counterintuitive to them. And they just want to log on the first time and it works. That makes it difficult to provide the same level of security that a conference room does, while still making it a good user experience that people want to come back and use time and time again.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of where I was with it because I looked at these products. I was originally looking at them for a company, and I when they first came out and they first started appearing, I was looking at one of them. And my impression of the actual product, so the actual thing itself, not the space, but just the thing, because that's where their concern was like, well, we're broadcasting this video. Could somebody be intercepting it and all this? And I was like, not really. I mean, they could, but it seemed very unlikely that somebody was, essentially wiretapping the video stream. That just didn't seem, and that was what they were all worried about. I was more in the space of, so you've got 9 people around the world who are all sitting in an airport or at their desk or in a coffee shop who are doing this meeting. The threat to me was more about people looking over your shoulder, people videoing over your shoulder, people looking through the window, and that kind of stuff than it was about the actual product being insecure.
Yeah, and so the underlying of it, you're going to get all those same protections that you'd expect from any company. The data transmitted over TLS, proper encryption for any kind of storage, stuff like that. It becomes a real human element problem more than a technical issue, like you were saying there, whenever you take that meeting online. Whenever you go online, we bring the meeting to you, but that leaves the decision to you to decide where that meeting's going to take place. So your company kind of has to decide how to handle that through policy, training, things like that. Where's an appropriate place for you to be when you have this meeting? If you're discussing sensitive topics, you probably don't want to do it in Starbucks. You want to find a more secluded place where you can talk privately.
Right, I agree. I mean, my big concern with this, the people I was talking to originally was the board of directors people. They were scattered all over the place, and they were talking. It wasn't national security, but it was serious stuff. They didn't want out, and they wanted to be comfortable with it. But so we ended up with a policy recommendation that they had to be in a private, lockable space that they controlled, because my feeling was that somebody in the environment was going to pick this up. But there was also the issue of the behavior of the people in the meeting, because if one of the members decided they're going to record this meeting on a flash drive, they could do that. I mean, the software they were using allowed them to record, and if they did so later, we've seen software that restricts that ability and things like that. But that still doesn't mean I couldn't just sit there and do this the whole time and off camera and capture the whole meeting on my phone. So there's a lot of threats, but there's a lot of threats to in-person meetings too, unless you've got armed guards and bug sniffers and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, you can make it reasonably secure, and you can keep adding on those protections so that something like OBS can't be recording on your computer. I don't think many video conferencing solutions are in a hurry to implement that stuff, because it can also be seen as invasive. But that is one of the risks you end up taking whenever you move to an online meeting as well, that you should be thinking about, is that if somebody really wants to record that meeting, you don't know where they are, what they've got around them, who else is around them. They are going to find a way to record that if they want to.
And there are mechanisms for that we've seen in testing. So there are services that are provided for testing, like at universities, they're doing online tests where they actually make people stand up and they have to use a camera and show the whole space that they're in and all these kind of things. So I haven't done a policy write-up like that, but I think that's where I'm going with it, is that you're going to have some kind of almost formal, very, stand up and video the room and show the space where you are so we can record it. And then you could lock down the actual machine so that they couldn't go to other sites and things like that at the same time. And that might prevent some of that, but it's still, there's always that outside chance. So I don't know how that's going to develop in terms of things like classified and stuff like that. But I know that you work on Fedramp, which is the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. That is the certification of cloud computing, basically. So all these tools are now sitting in the cloud, and so how does Fedramp really get involved in this from that perspective? Maybe you tell us a little bit what Fedramp is, and then how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Fedramp is something that I've actually really come to enjoy working on lately. I don't think that's something you often hear people say about different certification programs you go through, but so what Fedramp does is it takes the recommended security controls that are laid out in the NIST 853, and it tailors them to fit into a cloud-based environment. So you're taking the controls that the U.S. government's wanting to see implemented, You're applying them to your cloud infrastructure and going through a pretty thorough process to prove to them that you've actually implemented all of these controls. And that includes proving that you have continuous monitoring of the environment going on, with a reauthorization every 3 years, I believe, to prove once again that this is still something you're doing.
That makes sense to me. I mean, that's pretty standard with most of these kind of classification, data classification. I mean, they have audits and all this, and a lot of other stuff. Audit is starting to leak into like virtual meetings. The last time I did a Sarbanes audit, they didn't have a lot of virtualized meeting space, but that was something we were looking at. That was something that's starting to be in COBIT, is how do you make sure all this stuff is really secure. And when you do start recording, like I record class videos all the time, and they're stored out in the cloud somewhere. Now those are not classified, they're not secret, but the idea that that video is out there somewhere, someone may be able to get to it, is certainly of concern if it were either proprietary or it was something that was secret, classified, or whatever, and all of a sudden it's sitting on a server somewhere and I don't know where it is. I don't know if that server's in some guy's basement in Omaha, or that server is, locked in a vault at the bottom of the sea. Because and that's one of the sort of general things about the cloud. I think that everybody has that sort of misgiving. I'm taking all my stuff and I'm putting it somewhere. I don't know where the somewhere is. It's just somewhere. And for older people like me, not that I'm that old, but we worked with mainframe computing long, long ago, and it was a lot like that as well. So you had, you were dialing up to a mainframe that was who knows where, NYU or wherever you were connecting to, and you were saving things on there, and you didn't know who had access to it and who controlled it and all this kind of stuff. So do you think Fedramp maybe is a good place to start for people that are not necessarily federal or classified, but they're still trying to make sure they have good hygiene there?
If you're needing something with good hygiene, Fedramp's probably too much.
Okay.
Maybe taking a look at those controls and trying to implement some of those same things, the general idea of it, that's a good way to go. But Fedramp's incredibly thorough, takes a long time to implement. And going through the process for it is pretty much empirically proving to the government that I have implemented this stuff. You get auditors that come on site and they want to see proof of how everything is operating.
Right.
Very thorough.
Well, yeah, I wasn't suggesting really that people actually get Fedramp certified. I was just thinking, if you got that document, which is probably publicly available, that's a good place to start reading and say, here's what they're doing. Maybe this is how we write our, because that's how we did Sarbanes, was we took a lot of very heavy duty stuff and tried to gel it down into what best fits this particular business, because they weren't a government contractor, they weren't national security. So we didn't need to necessarily do everything like that.
Yeah, I don't think that Fedramp is available publicly, the documents for it. They might be, but I don't think that they are at this point. But you can pretty much take the NIST 853
right,
and morph those to what you're needing. You can tailor it yourself, because the Fedramp process is going to go through, and you're going to work with an auditor and probably some consultants as well, in order to tailor that to your individual circumstances.
I'll look and so just for your reference purposes, viewers, it's NIST 853, which is a public document. I wonder, I'll look and see if that Fedramp document is available to the public, because you'd almost think it is if it's a federal document. Most of that stuff is made available, but maybe not. So I'll look and see. Well, so if we are doing this, so if we are an enterprise and we're not going to be FedRAMP, but we are going to do a lot of our meetings online, what are some things you think we should maybe put in place around local artifacts? So one of the things I was thinking about was how much of this stuff gets put on a local machine, a laptop, a desktop, whatever, or phone or whatever, when you are using these tools?
So the software is, of course, on your computer. For recording it, you can choose to record to your computer or to the cloud. Each of them's got their benefits and drawbacks. There's not a lot you're going to do about, like we discussed earlier, if somebody wants to record that that meeting from their computer, they're going to find a way to do it. But trying to keep people away from doing that, the simplest is just administrative privileges. A lot of enterprises still have, or maybe not enterprises, but larger companies even still have people with admin privileges on their laptops, on their desktops, so they can install whatever they want to get that done. You got to put those roadblocks in place to at least make it more difficult for them to do it. The more difficult you make it, the less likely somebody's going to actually get it done.
I agree. So my three things that were really sort of starting point was can you look at, can you capture something locally and distribute it? So that's step one. And how would people do that? And remember, before you get too worked up about this, I've been in plenty of meetings that were at board level or whatever, and I've been in classified meetings too, and they don't always search everybody or strip search everybody. So if someone's carrying recording devices into these meetings physically, nothing to do with the cloud, they could still do the same thing. If I'm walking in with my phone and I turn it on record mode when I walk in the door and I put it in my pocket, I'm still capturing that meeting, and that's the same problem. Another one that I have is how can you ensure who's on the other end? So a lot of these meetings I attend, a lot of times people don't put up a video. They're just, it says Doug White, or, and the same thing with call-in meetings. You call in and it says state your name, and I can just very easily say Johann Strauss, and that's what it will say I am in the meeting. So there's a little bit of that about this sort of non-repudiation of, are you sure that that's the person you think you're talking to? I've had interviews where they said you're meeting with this person, and I don't know who that person is. I've never seen them. I don't know their name. It could be anybody posing as that person. And then my third one, of course, was then shoulder surfing, snooping type stuff, where somebody's actually just looking over your shoulder. What does Fedramp put around all this? There must be some kind of, is it just audit controls, or you just test it and see if it's done that way, or what do they do?
So for the Fedramp portion of that, a lot of that's going to be because of the unique circumstances you end up in with cloud service providers. Not everything is on premise. That's the definition of cloud service providers there. You take a shared responsibility of things. So we can implement technical controls. We can give you all the technical controls that we can to try and help you control these kind of things. But the other side of that is one of the biggest problems with any kind of information leakage there is going to be the human element. So you have to share that responsibility, and the person on the other end, the customer, the users, they have to be properly trained, educated. There have to be policies in place for what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. A lot of that burden does get shifted to the users, and so that becomes your weak point.
Is there any kind of non-repudiation stuff that's in that, where it literally, I have to somehow prove when I log in, I have to show an ID, or I have to use a biometric to prove that I'm actually me when I connect to that meeting?
Out of the box, no. There are controls that can be put in place to allow that, but out of the box, we tend to make it an easier solution for people to use and allow you to decide what your own balance between security and convenience is going to be for your users. I can't speak to all web conferencing companies, but there are a couple of ways to ensure that the person on the other end is who they say they are. The most common is going to be registration. So you go through a registration page, you get emailed a link to join the meeting or provided with a meeting number. And some services might let you manually approve those registrations. So if it's from an email that you're familiar with, you can say, yes, this is who I want. No, I don't want this person. And passwords are another way. Passwords are far from perfect, but it does give you an added measure to help ensure that only authorized people are joining. And with some services, you might even be able to restrict your participants to joining from certain email domains, or that they are signed in to that application software.
Okay. But in Fedramp, do they require that kind of non-repudiation or not? Software notwithstanding.
So the way we've chosen to handle it in Fedramp is it's kind of an invitation-only system. You can't just go up and sign up and say, hey, I'm going to use the Fedramp version of this platform.
I see.
So anybody who gets an account on that Fedramp platform, it is going to be already an authorized user.
I see. So let's say, what are some things then that you should just never put into online meetings? I don't, and I'm not up on this per se, but I know that in like top. I used to have a top secret clearance, but I've been to classified meetings, and there's all these strictures around that and what you can do and what you can't do, and you have to go out and flip the little card over on the outside of the door and all this stuff. Are there other things that you would just say, just don't do this in online meetings?
If there's something that you absolutely cannot have that information getting released under any circumstances, like with some state secrets that you might have had in some of those meetings, I wouldn't do that online. You're probably still better off with an old-fashioned face-to-face meetings, but with the right precautions, you can handle most classified data in your online meetings. You want to make sure everybody's in an appropriate location for the material that's being handled, and you'll want to make sure that the video communication provider has some kind of end-to-end encryption that you can enable for the meeting. Wouldn't necessarily record your sensitive stuff to a cloud-based storage, but you'd be fine doing it locally as long as you've also got proper controls on your local environment to protect that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this always comes back to you have to have controls around this, which you should already have. I mean, there should be controls on the way you do meetings now, and if you don't have them and you don't audit them, then you should be doing that. I don't care whether it's classified or not. If you have business meetings with people, you should have some controls in place that are there that are going to manage this process. Another question that people often ask me, and I'll ask you, it's not really related to security so much, but is what do you recommend for environment for doing these kind of meetings? Because like I actually don't like using headphones, so at home I have a really nice mic and I place it so that the speakers don't go anywhere near it and it's above my head. And that works just fine. And I have a bunch of lights, so I have all my DMX lights and all this kind of stuff to make me look sexy. But what would you recommend? Do you have a preferred setup?
I definitely recommend headphones. One of the biggest problems I see with people whenever they have a bad experience in a meeting is they were using a laptop. And so they've got the sound coming out of the laptop, it's going right back into that mic, and everybody's going, why are we getting all this feedback? Now there's a loud screeching. It's just the easiest way to make sure that you're not going to get any echo. You're going to have a consistently good experience. If you've got the skill to place a microphone and you've got a decent microphone that's got echo cancellation, you can place it properly and make sure you manage the volume level coming out of your speakers, then yeah, absolutely, that works as well. But that takes more time up front and is usually more of a permanent setup than the average user has. So headphones are always definitely the way that I choose to go for it. And lights, that's also something people don't necessarily always take into consideration when they're having meetings. You want the lighting in front of you. Yeah. If you have the lighting in front of you, maybe a little bit above you, it gives people a real good view of you. I don't have the best lighting in here. I've just got my overhead light. But people will sit in front of a window, so the window's behind them, and then you've just got this silhouette of a person.
I've seen that. I've been in that meeting. Yeah, I've seen that. It's like the mystery person that's in the background, right? It's like this silhouette, and it's just like, I wonder who that is.
Yeah, it looks real suspicious whenever you end up doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and so if you do a lot of this, which I do because I record things for school or whatever, I actually have trusses. I have truss bars above my desk, and I have a whole bunch of lights there. I have lights on the sides. I have actually lights on the backdrop. I have a DMX controller, and I love gadgets, so it was fun to set up. And once I learned that DMX was a network protocol, it was even more fun because then I was like sniffing the DMX packets you can grab off the wire, which is pretty cool. And I was really impressed with that protocol. So yeah, if you're gonna do a lot of these, or you want to have a permanent setup, then a microphone like a Blue Yeti or something is really nice. But I completely agree with you. If you don't have that, using that laptop condenser mic and the speakers in your laptop is going to make your life be pretty much awful, and it's going to make everybody in the meeting hate you a lot. So get some good headphones that are comfortable if you're going to sit in long meetings, because one of the things I've found is that if you don't have really good ones, they get really uncomfortable really fast, and then you're sitting there for 2 hours like with sweat pouring down the sides of your face, under your collar, and all kinds of weird stuff. So maybe, I don't know, do your ears sweat?
Every now and then, yeah, you're going to end up sweating. I sometimes have my big green gaming headphones that are like the cuffs on the side of your head, but those end up being a conversation piece.
Well, I will tell you the ones I used to use my Pilot headphones. You have to get an adapter for them because they actually have a different plug-in on them, but you can get an adapter, and they're really nice. They have like these gel cushion pads that go all the way around your ear to cut all the noise down, and they have a really good microphone. You do, and you have to push to talk. So it was a really nice feature actually for meetings, because that way if you suddenly got your phone was ringing or something, because you'll be in those meetings all the time where the phone's ringing or the dog is barking. I used to have a weekly meeting with this woman who I think had some sort of elaborate menagerie in her apartment, because there were birds, dogs, we think maybe like some kind of larger than an average cat that made like a snarling sound. And then there were other weird noises like monkey kind of sounds. And I never wanted to go like, are you like in a zoo or something? Because it was really strange. But yeah, put your dogs out, your cats you can't put out, and they will jump on the table and knock the camera off and all that kind of stuff. But we've all seen that. So last thing then, Eric, before we go. Are there things that you would suggest, like not having large cats in your office while you're doing this, that behavior in meetings? I've been a lot of them. I've seen people do really foolish things on occasion. They are being recorded. Do you have any final tips for our viewers about how to behave in these meetings?
So since it's an online meeting, you are eventually going to run into people that don't respect that meeting like they would in a conference room. And while we all typically know how to behave in a meeting, handle it pretty professionally. Your headphones, that's a big one. That'll ruin things instantly for everyone. But whenever I host a meeting, I like to do it with the video off by default and the participants muted when they enter. Not everyone realizes that it's going to be a video meeting and may not be dressed for the occasion. Having those two things off allows your participants to turn them on. You can avoid some loud interrupting noises and awkward situations. So it's real important for you as the host, because you can't control the behavior of people. It's important for you to know how to control those participants. So being able to turn off their microphone, their videos, or kick them out of the meetings if they're real repeat offenders. But we already touched on the most important stuff for that, for your personal behavior, which is make sure that you've got headphones or something like that on, because that'll instantly ruin the meeting for everyone.
Yeah, and that cuts down on the dogs and other noise too, like that, and the jackhammer outside your apartment in Manhattan where they're like drilling on the wall. If you have good headphones, a good microphone, you'll be amazed at how much noise just the little microphone cuts out, because it's close to your mouth and you get a much better sound. I think my couple of things on this from stuff I've seen, be sure if you're a host or you're just attending a meeting to be aware that a lot of times they can activate your video. So it's not a bad idea if you don't want to be on video to cover up your camera or disable it before you enter the meeting, because my famous story about that was I was at a training thing that I was really bored with, and I was actually playing the guitar, and the host of the meeting, who was Russ, he's not here for me to give him grief, flipped on and said, let me show you, I can activate a person's camera, and flip my camera on. I was sitting there playing the guitar, and I was like, oh, hi. Yeah, no, I was just holding this because it makes me feel better about that. But be aware that hosts can do this kind of thing. And my other one you mentioned as well, be aware that if you, I try to always mute my microphone myself when I enter meetings, because I have seen people enter meetings and be talking to somebody, or the meeting starts and they didn't know it, and a couple times seen people say really, really inappropriate things. Last one, be aware that not everyone who's attending the meeting you're going to be aware of. So be very careful if you're doing job interviews or you're in a subordinate type position about what you say and who you say it about. Twice I saw somebody do that and they didn't realize the person was actually in the meeting because they had logged in and it was just set anonymous because they were on a phone. And the person started talking about this person who was on the phone, and the guy was like, yeah, I'm here. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to say that about you. I didn't realize you were attending the meeting today. And it's a sort of like career-ending injury. Any last words, Eric?
No, I think we've pretty much hammered most of this into the ground. Getting too much farther into it would be really getting into the weeds, and we'd have another hour segment on our hands. I would say for the host turning on your video and stuff like that, I would talk with your video conference provider to make sure stuff like that's not possible, because it should really be asking you to turn your video on, not just automatically turning the video on. That's that's pretty bad practice.
Yeah, well, that was probably something where I opted in, and I just didn't think about it, because I know at various points in that meeting they did expect you to be on video, so I was prepared to be on video. I just had turned my video off for a little while because I was really, really bored with the what was going on, and yeah, Russ and Russ figured I would be safe, but yeah, I got it. It actually he turned it into a learning moment, being Russ. Thanks, Eric Carlile from Zoom Video Communications, for joining us on Secure Digital Life this week. I appreciate your time, and I hope everybody got something out of that. See you next time.